The voting rights bill fails in the Senate once again. So now it's going to be change the rules and see if they can't get it to change in another way. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. In other news, President Biden gives a 2-hour press conference yesterday talking about his first year in office and telling us how great he believes that he actually did. So we'll talk about some of that and watch some clips. Starbucks has nixed their vaccine mandate, and their leftoid followers have jumped in on suit and called them evil. So we'll talk just a bit about what's happening with that. And Chief Justice Roberts has buried the media narrative vilifying Neil Gorsuch. It is going to be all this and more. You're just mad you can't date me. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. You ever have one of those mornings where you think that this might be the time that you might get swatted midstream just because everything else has gone so wrong? This has been a banner morning here before we got started, and we are started now, ready to go here. I did, when I made the announcement on my channel, and I saw Quest put out the announcement for the YouTube side. Thank you for that, because I could not get the YouTube side to open back up so I could get the link back out to it. I couldn't get it. It's up there now. It's working now. But yeah, when I'm sitting here trying to get the link, I'm just sitting here like, come on, refresh. I want to get the link here. And I just got pissed and hit the Twitch link out there on Twitter. So the announcement is out, and Fanning has put the announcement out too. So thank you for that. Thank you for the support in getting that out there. But yeah, I mean, woke up in a fog, just tired, out of it, had everything. I mean, I had almost all the articles up here, but there's been some new stuff up here. That we've had some new stuff developed just this morning here. I thought we were going to start talking about Biden's voting right, or Biden's big speech, but then the voting rights thing happened overnight. And then something with Henry Queller over in Texas too. So we'll be talking about that actually to start the show, because that is breaking. So once we get done with finance, we'll be talking about that instead. So, everything's organized here. It's going to be a long show, but do remember I do still have to get out of here at some point because I have to go to work here. But it's going to be all this and more over on Contemporary. So, we got to get right into it. We got to get right in and started off of this one just because we've got so much going on here. Nice little chiptunes playlist for the morning too, by the way. I found that and I thought that was pretty cool. So, we'll do that. But let's get into it here because I've already lost enough time here just having technical difficulties left and right. Let's get started, but before we do, make sure you guys go head over and check out turnsofpagesproductions.com. Turns of Pages Productions will be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. Getting ready to launch, and once we launch, we can carry great shows such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Breckenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Freckles and Brick Show, and The Porch Boys. So go check all those shows out. They're all great friends to the network. They're great friends to Liberty, and they're great programs to go back and watch. I'm not sure how the schedule's going to be with Daily Ignoramus. It sounds like he might have got the coup himself, but I mean, he doesn't believe in viruses, so he'll be just fine. But go and check out all those shows. They're all great friends. They're awesome people. And let's get right into it. Let's start with the finance here for the day. And the Dow actually went down again yesterday. The futures all looked hopeful, and the futures look hopeful again for today. But yep, everything jumped up at the beginning, and then jumped rope with the line, and then dropped off sharply towards the end of the day. As we went through the day and seeing some of the things that were coming back out of that. And we'll talk about what happened throughout the day as to why it's looking like this this might rebound again tomorrow, but it might not too. Or today, I should say. But it might not as well. Looking in at your Bitcoin is at 42,054 US dollars and 40 US cents. That is up 0.93%. So now it's coming back up on the rise here. Not very fast. Up 386 US dollars and 10 US cents. So not very fast at all, but still jumping back up on the rise. So if you're looking to have some Bitcoin, which I am not personally, but if you're looking to have some Bitcoin, it might be time to look into seeing where the rise is going and whether or not this would be good for your portfolio. Looking in at your scrap metal prices from the iScrap app, looks like copper is up, steel is down, aluminum is up. Looking at your individual plays, all of your copper plays are in the green right now. Your steel is not doing so well. Almost all of your plays are in the red, except for stainless steel, which is on the rise, and conduit steel as well. Looking in at aluminum, siding, aluminum copper fin, cans, rims are all up. Sheet aluminum and radiators are down. Looking in at your other plays, motors are up, ballasts are up, lead is up, batteries are up. So if you've got those car batteries that you didn't take in for the core, take those into the scrapyard and get a little bit more out of them. On your catalytic converters, those are still mixed with regular, domestic, and small GM down, and small foreign, and large GM up. Compressors are up, alternators are up, carbide is down, hard drives are down, motherboards are up, power supplies, low-grade boards, and PC tower are all down right now. So a little bit of a mix in the industrial market. We'll see what happens with that. Let's see what IBD has to say for the morning. From Investors Business Daily, Dow Jones futures rise up after correction extends, losses for stocks in beat-up sector, worth watching, from Ed Carson. Dow futures rose Thursday morning along with S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures. Though they are off morning highs, the stock market rally extended losses Wednesday, even as the 10-year Treasury yield retreated modestly. Alcoa and United Airlines reported earnings after Wednesday's close. American Airlines, Travelers, Union Pacific, and Baker Hughes are on tap early Thursday. It's interesting that we see rims being up in the aluminum markets here because Alcoa is a rim manufacturer. The software sector has been among the hardest hit over the past several weeks. Microsoft stock and Palo Alto Networks gained ground on Wednesday, while Fortinet and New Relic reversed lower but outperformed the general market. All are below their 50-day lines, especially Microsoft. But these are a handful of software stocks that you may want to keep your eye on for the next stock market rally. Meanwhile, tech titan Apple continues to look better than just about any big tech stock, but Apple fell 2.1% Wednesday to 166.23, finally closing below its 50-day line. Microsoft is on the IBD leaderboard. Fortinet and Microsoft are IBD long-term leaders. Alcoa earnings easily beat views while sales narrowly topped. AA stock rose modestly in extended trade. Shares dipped 0.7% on Wednesday, but are holding their 21-day line near highs. United Airlines reported a smaller than expected Q4 loss as revenue topped, but guidance on cost and capacity disappointed investors. UAL stock fell slightly in pre-market action after closing down at 2.65% below its 50-day line. American Airlines reported a loss in revenue that were slightly better than expected. AAL stock rose slightly before the open. Shares slumped 3% on Wednesday after dropping below their 50-day line on Tuesday. Travelers easily beat Q4 EPS views for the Dow Jones insurance giant. Traveler stock rose solidly before the open, signaling a move back to 163.39 point. Shares fell 2.1% on Wednesday. Union Pacific earnings modestly topped views. UNP was not yet active, slightly below its 50-day line. Baker Hughes earnings came in below views, while revenue was essentially in line. BKR stock edged higher, slightly below a 27.76 buy point. Meanwhile, the ocean transport firm Matson pre-announced Q4 EPS far above views late Tuesday. Matson stock jumped 8% before the open, near an official 93.27 cup with handle buy point, but signaling an aggressive entry as well on your futures. Dow futures rose 0.3% versus fair value, boosted by TRB stock. S&P 500 futures advanced 0.4%, and NASDAQ 100 futures climbed 0.75%. All signaled slightly stronger gains earlier this morning. So it looks like everything is boosting up right now, but it was boosting up yesterday, so we'll see what's happening with that. The 10-year Treasury yield was steady at 1.83%. That's steady. That's a scary number, dude. Crude oil edged lower. China's central bank cut some key lending rates, continuing to try to bolster a flagging economy. Remember, Overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So a few things moving, and it looks like they're going to try to tell you it's going to happen today. It's going to come back up today, and it very well might. And we'll continue to watch this and see where it goes. Let's grab one from CNBC. Kramer says not all stocks are struggling to start 2022. You just need to know where to look. From Kevin Stankiewicz. CNBC's Jim Cramer said Wednesday he believes it's possible for investors to build a successful portfolio despite Wall Street's tough start to 2022. Real companies doing real things with tremendous brand loyalty are what will triumph in this environment. You just need to know where to look, the Mad Money host said after the tech-heavy NASDAQ Composite closed Wednesday's session in correction territory, meaning it's down more than 10% from its most recent highs, which were recorded in November. The S&P 500 fell nearly 1% on Wednesday, putting up its year-to-date decline at 4.9%. The blue-chip Dow Jones Industrial Average slid almost 1%, bringing its losses to 3.6% so far in 2022. While Cramer said there are real headwinds, such as inflation worries that are weighing on the market, investors need to look past the big picture and focus on characteristics of a successful company. It's not the broken supply chain, it's who can triumph over the broken supply chain, Cramer said. It's not the jump in raw costs, it's who has the brands that allow them to pass these costs on customers. Well, that's... wow. That's the way that you want to play that game, huh? It's who has the brands that can make everything more expensive for the people who are going to go buy this. Fuck what everybody else does. As long as they can pass it along to customers, fuck everybody else. It's not the inevitable rate hike from the Fed, it's who can thrive in a higher interest rate environment. For example, Cramer pointed to Procter & Gamble. For one example, the consumer products giant saw its stock rise 3.36% Wednesday after it reported better than expected second quarter results. Even though it had $2.8 billion in commodity, freight, and currency headwinds, it could pass those costs on to you, the consumer, without batting an eyelash because not all brands are created equal. Procter's are created better, he said, with large amounts of government subsidy and a large amount of grants holding them up. But they won't tell you about that. Bank of America, which beat quarterly profit estimates Wednesday morning, is another example of the kind of company investors should consider owning in their current environment, Cramer said. This is an institution that thrives off rate hikes, so when we see the numbers it reported today, I think it deserved to rally a lot more than it did, frankly, because 2022 could be the year of Bank of America. Bank of America, we totally promised, did not pay Jim Cramer to say that. So, that's what they see off of that. Jim Cramer says, go out and buy, especially if they can pass their costs off to the consumer, and like I said, fuck everybody else who has to pay more. So that's what they say off of that. Alright, let's start with breaking right now news. FBI says it's conducting a court-authorized search of Rep. Henry Queller's Texas home. From Daniela Diaz and Evan Perez. The Federal Bureau of Investigation said in a statement Wednesday evening that it's doing a court-authorized search of the Texas home of Representative Henry Queller. The FBI was present in the vicinity of Windridge Drive and Estate Drive in Laredo, conducting court-authorized law enforcement activity, a spokesperson for the FBI said. In a statement, the FBI cannot provide further comment on an ongoing investigation. A spokesperson for Queller told CNN that Congressman Queller is will fully cooperate in any investigation. He is committed to ensuring that justice and the law are upheld. Queller, a moderate Democrat, has served in Texas' 28th congressional district since 2005. He has not voted in person at the Capitol since January 12th. He currently has an active proxy letter which allows another lawmaker to vote for him in person in the House. The news was first reported by the Monitor newspaper. Reporter Valerie Gonzalez with the Monitor reported in a tweet Wednesday that by around 7:30 p.m., a group of agents loaded large bags, plastic bins, and a computer into a federal vehicle. Others appeared to be logging the items. This story has been updated with additional details on Thursday. So as of right now, it doesn't appear that anybody knows why Queller is being investigated. I don't like it. And I do have to wonder if there's some level of witch hunt that's going on with this, of course, because this is a person who didn't come back out. A person who was moderate, who didn't toe the progressive line, possibly somebody who was in favor of the voting rights law in Texas. That's a possibility. But we don't know. Nobody has any idea what's going on with this guy right now. But it's kind of sad, too, when we're sitting in this situation. This is happening the same day as the voting rights law failed in Congress. And we have to sit back and wonder if this is specifically because of something political. We can't look at any organization and look at them and say, political or not political? The first assumption has to be that there's some political bias to this. And this is a Democrat. So, as of right now, I'm not sure. I don't know what he's being for. The FBI can't comment on anything off of this. Just that he's having properties raided at this point. Let's have a look at NBC News. Rep. Henry Queller says he'll cooperate with any probe amid reports of the FBI raid at Texas home. This is from Tim Stello. Democratic House member says he will fully cooperate in any investigation amid reports that the FBI raided his Texas home Wednesday. Rep. Henry Queller, whose South Texas district includes San Antonio and Laredo, said in a statement that he is committed to ensuring that justice and the law are upheld. An FBI spokeswoman said agents were present in the vicinity of Queller's home in Laredo conducting court-authorized law enforcement activity. She declined to provide any additional information, citing an ongoing investigation. Queller, 66, sits on the Powerful Appropriations Committee, a lawyer and former customs broker. He was Texas Secretary of State before he won his first congressional election in 2004. So, there again, some stuff to look at, some stuff to see off of this, and just, I don't know. And we could always come back and do our friend Midget B's favorite thing too. Can you imagine if the shoe was on the other foot? Could you imagine if this was the other direction, if this was the other side? Well, I mean, we don't have to imagine because we saw plenty of it there where the shoe was on the other foot and you have wall-to-wall breathless coverage of, look, they're finally doing justice. Republicans are being arrested for being Republican. But this is one to continue to sit back and watch and see. And yes, like I said, it is very sad that we can't just come back and wonder, okay, is there an actual crime here? The first thing we all have to wonder is this a political witch hunt for something? Is this an intimidation attempt to try to get a certain outcome from something? And I think that it is. I think it's a possibility. I'm not going to go completely definitive on that. I'm going to walk back what I just said. I think it's a possibility. So we'll see what happens with that. All right, and we will start with the show that I wanted to do from the time that I got up this morning, before I found out about Henry Queller. Let's first listen to Amy Klobuchar. Amy Klobuchar has something to say about the filibuster, which that vote is probably going to happen today. Let's have a listen.
Reasons not to move forward with legislation at this watershed moment, as reason not to do what it takes to come to protecting the most sacred of rights, the right to vote. Some have argued that allowing voting rights legislation to pass the Senate without clearing a 60-vote threshold would be a mistake that would open the door to somehow leading to wild swings in federal policy. I'm trying to imagine this place ever involved in such a thing, given how slowly we go and how many people understandably want to make sure we're careful in how we pass laws. But that's one of the things that have been raised for why we need some kind of a 60-vote threshold, which of course is not in the Constitution. The word filibuster or cloture, not in the Constitution. And in fact, legislatures across this land some of whom do very good things, do not use a 60-vote threshold. In fact, democracies across the world do not use a 60-vote threshold. The truth is this: we have tried for months to persuade our Republican colleagues to join us in supporting legislation, to work with us, to debate it. But what they do is they throw a wrench into the process and then basically walk out that door and go home. We don't have that debate that allows us to have amendments and allows us to ultimately have a vote on the bill. It is cut off from a vote.
Well, I guess I can start by saying how good it is that Republicans come in and put the kibosh to fucking shit and the federal government, because there should be more kiboshing all across the board. My favorite federal government is the one that doesn't do anything. Which, first midterm, Biden might actually wind up being one of my favorite presidential terms. No, because he's come in and done enough stuff by EO that it's not going to be a do-nothing presidency. He's done enough to fuck up our economy that way. And I'm not saying he did good, I'm just saying he did something. Supply chain issues, inflation, signing this horrendously expensive rescue plan that we didn't need by that point. We just needed the government to get the fuck out of the way. And I always love the fact too that you know, that's the big talking point right now. Oh, there's nothing in the Constitution that says the filibuster. Oh yeah, but there's something in the Constitution that says you need 3/4 of a vote of your chamber to come back around and change the rules of your chamber. And by the way, the filibuster was changed and put into the rules by 3/4 vote of your chamber. That is in the Constitution. Just so you know. Just so you know. That's there. But yes, I love the fact that they're coming in and throwing that wrench in there and walking out the door and going home. The federal government has too much power. But that's what they have going up with that. Let's grab one from CNN. The Senate Democrats suffer defeat on voting rights after the vote to change the rules fails. From Claire Perrin, Ali Zaslav, and Ted Barrett. Senate Democrats suffered a major defeat Wednesday in their efforts to pass voting rights legislation, a key issue for the party, which is under pressure to take action ahead of midterms elections just months away. An attempt by Democrats to change the filibuster rules in order to pass a voting bill amid opposition from moderate Democrat senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. The vote was 52-48, with two moderates joining all GOP senators. After the vote failed, there was a loud round of applause from Republicans. Dude, don't you just hate living in a country, by the way? Let me ask you the question. Don't you hate living in a country where a 52% minority can stop legislation from the 48% majority? That's how this works, right? Sinema released a statement Wednesday evening explaining why she opposed the change. The Arizona Democrat said that she maintained long-standing opposition to actions that would deepen our divisions and risk repeated radical reversals in federal policy, cementing uncertainty and further eroding confidence in our government. The proposed rules change to allow talking filibuster on the legislation would have forced lawmakers who want to filibuster the bill to come to the Senate floor and speak in opposition. Once those speeches come to an end, the Senate would be able to hold a simple majority vote for final passage. The move would effectively eliminate the 60-vote threshold set by the filibuster. The effort by Senate Democrats to change the filibuster rules came after Republicans once again blocked a voting rights bill put forward by Democrats in the latest partisan showdown over the issue. Earlier Wednesday evening, the Senate failed to break a GOP filibuster on voting legislation that combines key provisions of two bills, the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Bullshit Act. At least 10 Republicans would have needed to vote with Democrats to clear the 60-vote threshold to break a filibuster, which was not expected to happen amidst a widespread Republican opposition to the voting legislation. The legislation failed by a vote to 49 to 51. Senate Majority Leader Chuck U. Schumer changed his vote to a no before the vote was gavelled, so he can offer a motion to reconsider the vote. Oh, really? In a show of support for voting rights and changing Senate rules, House members in the Congressional Black Caucus marched to the Senate, warning that no matter what happens, they won't stop fighting to pass it. We want the Senate to act today in a favorable way, but if they don't, we ain't giving up. I am too young to give up, Rep. Jim Clyburn, the number 3 Democrat in the House, told CNN. Senate Minority Leader Turtleman McConnell on Wednesday defended the Senate's rule and said that Republicans would continue their track record of upholding the legislative filibuster, which he called the essence of the Senate, the next time they're in the majority. It's pretty safe to say this is the biggest day in the history of the Senate, McConnell said. The Kentucky Republican, without naming them, congratulated Manchin and Sinema for their courage, and bearing in mind that in the very near future, the shoes might be on the other foot. Manchin has said that he will not vote to eliminate or weaken the filibuster, and Sinema has defended the 60-vote threshold. Both senators have argued the filibuster helps bring about partisan compromise in the Senate, or bipartisan compromise, rather, in the Senate. As a result, the push to change Senate rules sets up a major showdown among Democrats as the party gears up to put 2 of its own members on the spot in an effort that appears doomed to fail. Democrats, who control only 50 seats in the Senate, are under enormous pressure from liberal activists to take on voting rights on action, and President Joe Biden has trained his focus on the issue as other elements of his domestic agenda have remained stalled. Biden vowed to keep fighting during a recent visit to Capitol Hill, but conceded that he doesn't know if Democrats will be able to pass legislation that they are pushing for. The honest-to-God answer is, I don't know whether we can get this done, Biden said. I hope we can get this done, but I'm not sure. Schumer gave an impassioned floor speech on Wednesday and defended the push to change Senate rules. As we debate this issue, so critical to the wellspring of our democracy, we will all confront the critical question: shall members of this chamber do what is necessary to pass these bills and move them to the president's desk? It's my hope that courage awakens within the heart of our Republican colleagues before it stays out, he said, adding that if Senate cannot protect the right to vote, then the Senate rules must be reformed. Our proposal for a talking filibuster on these pieces of legislation would be the first step towards passing voting rights, restoring this body, and breaking the gridlock we now face on this vital issue, Schumer said. Well, that's the problem. And that's been the big problem with this, is where does this end? Where does it end? That's the big question that everybody should have about something like this, is where does it end? Oh, well, hey, we're just going to carve out this one little pet project that we want. Oh, you know what? Hey, let's just go back and carve out the filibuster for this other pet project. Oh, hey, we want to go spend $10 trillion fucking dollars. Let's go make another carve out here. Oh, hey, we used our budget reconciliation. No, let's just make another carve out here. And I told you, I promised that this would be a problem when it came time for the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling should have been filibustered. But no, they made a carve out for it. Now they want to come back and make a carve out for everything else. That should have been filibustered. That should have been put up for budget reconciliation. And let them use the budget reconciliation on that. It's not like they're going to get it for the Build Back Bullshit plan. Manchin's already stood in the way of that. Manchin has warned against partisan division. In a speech before the votes on Wednesday, Manchin warned against partisan division and argued that lawmakers must seek compromise, even if it's challenging to do so. Allowing one party to exert complete control in the Senate with only a simple majority will only pour fuel on the fire of political whiplash and dysfunction that is tearing this nation apart, Manchin said on the Senate floor. You do not have to look very far to see how we're tearing ourselves apart. Every part of this country. People are divided now. Well, and they probably will be, because this was supposed to be a great experiment of what happens when you let people mostly govern themselves and let their governing authorities be close to them rather than by some big, nameless, faceless organization 1,000 miles away. That's what this was all supposed to be from the start. And if, of course, the federal government, the Supreme Court, the executive branch, the legislature, was drawn back to their roles of dealing with interstate commerce and foreign diplomacy and no other roles, and I'm looking at you, 17th Amendment, we would sure be in a lot better place right now as far as the federal government went, but that's not going to happen. Let's grab one from the Hill. Fury over voting rights fight turns personal on Capitol Hill. From Mike Lillis and Scott Wong. The fight over voting rights has gone from partisan to personal. President Brandon and his Democratic allies, furious with Republicans for opposing voting rights protections they had embraced for decades, are... Hold on. Back up. Back the fuck up. You remember that smooth talking Chicago politician, that smooth talking Chicago lawyer, the one of it. Let me start throwing dollar bills down until you see a number that you like, and then I'll just say that I did it, that I fixed it all, and that. If this has really been on your mind for decades, why hasn't it been done yet? Why didn't we have a fight like this in 2009, 2010? 2010 was only 12 years ago. And it was one of the last times where where the Democrats had a majority in all three houses, and they still couldn't get a goddamn thing done, by the way. And then the Tea Party movement jumped up and took everything back over. See, if this is really on your mind for decades, why are we just doing this now? Why couldn't this get done under Clinton? Hey, Bush is your best friend now, so why couldn't you do it under Bush? Are lashing out across the aisle with racially charged assertions that the GOP would rather secure power than ensure civil rights. Yeah, I'd be careful with that statement if I were you Democrats, because a lot of this seems like you're just trying to secure power right now. Republicans have fired back, accusing their Democratic critics of twisting the debate away from the underlying policy to launch unfounded and highly disparaging attacks on the fundamental integrity of their political adversaries. The discussion has become inflamed in ways remarkable even by the standards of the fierce hostility and heightened distrust that practically defines relations between the two parties on Capitol Hill, particularly since last year's attack on the Capitol by a pro-Trump mob. The mental masturbation that's required to still believe that was the Capitol attack. Those tensions, simmering irregularly for the last year, are now bursting into full boil as Democrats seek to adopt new federal voting protections designed to counteract the efforts of GOP-led states to install new restrictions at the polls heading into the midterm elections. Black Democrats, warning of a return to the era of Jim Crow, have taken charge of the debate, and they're pulling no punches in condemning these lawmakers who would stand in the way when the legislation hits the Senate floor. So today, if they don't vote, that's evil. And we want America to know that they're cooperating with evil. Rep. Joyce Beatty of Ohio, chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, said of the recalcitrant senators, pointing to Martin Luther King Jr.'s warning that those who silently accept evil are cooperating with it. We're asking them to do our job, or do their job, because our democracy cannot be filibustered. The right to vote cannot be filibustered. Okay, here's a question. Can anybody ever name, by the way, an eligible voter who's been denied a vote, who's been denied a right to vote? Has there ever been a story of an eligible voter who's been denied? Beatty made those comments after leading a band of roughly 20 Black Caucus members on a walk across the Capitol from the House's Lincoln Room to the doors of the U.S. Senate to demand passage of the voting rights legislation. When a reporter asked about the two senators blocking the changes to filibuster rules, centrist Manchin and Sinema, CBC members quickly corrected her, 52 senators, 52 senators. While they're frustrated with Manchin and Sinema, CBC members say they won't let the other 50 GOP senators off the hook. It's a message being echoed by Democratic leaders who are also accusing Republicans of seeking to deny Americans one of their most fundamental constitutional rights. So, they're going to bring this out and say 52 members, 52 members. In a 100-vote body of Congress, how many votes does it take to make a majority? Because I guarantee you it's not 48. So is that telling me that you're in the minority at this point? We see Republicans trying to undermine the rights of citizens to vote, and that's why it's not passing. House Minority Leader Steny Hoyer told reporters on Wednesday, rejecting the notion that Manchin and Sinema are the only figures standing in the way. The personal tenor of Democrats' critiques echoes are intoned by Biden last week when he visited Georgia, the home of King and the late John Lewis, a civil rights icon for whom the voting rights legislation is named, and compared their opponents of the bill to some of the most notorious racists in the nation's history. Yes, Biden gave the speech in which he said, if you're not with me, if you don't sit down, kneel down, and accept whatever it is that we're going to try to do to you, then you're basically just Jefferson Davis. You're Strom Thurmond. You're Bull Connor. You're George Wallace. Because Democrats have nothing other than calling people they don't agree with racist. So, that's your voting rights. That's what's going on with that. Let's shift gears here. Let's talk about President Brandon, starting with the New York Post. Biden insists that he's outperformed expectations in first solo White House news conference in 10 months. Full disclosure, I haven't watched this one. A self-contradicting President Biden said Wednesday that Russia President Vladimir Putin would ultimately prevail if Moscow invades Ukraine, but would not face a muted U.S. response for a minor incursion, while also blaming Republicans for blocking his legislative agenda, insisting his struggling administration had probably outperformed what anybody thought would happen. In only his second solo White House news conference, Biden admitted that Russia will be able to prevail over time if it launches an invasion, and added that the precise response of America and its allies depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion, and then we end up having a fight about what to do and what not to do, etc., the president said near the start of what turned out to be a nearly 2-hour appearance in the East Room. But if they actually do what they're capable of doing with the force that they've massed on the border, it's going to be a disaster for Russia. Dude, Russia's not afraid of you. In other highlights from the marathon press conference, Biden said inflation is going to be painful for a lot of people and put the blame on soaring prices on the supply chain crisis, while claiming there's been progress on speeding up access to materials. He admitted that there's a lot we have to do to bring inflation under control, but it's going to be hard. Hard, I'm telling you, it's going to be hard. And that's what's going to take a lot of work. Biden admitted he'll have to break up his signature $2 trillion Build Back Bullshit bill into pieces and chunks so he can get Congress to approve them. I'm not going to negotiate myself as to what should and shouldn't be in it, but I think we can break the package up and get as much as we can now and come back later for the rest later. Biden also acknowledged that the two really big components I feel strongly about, extending the child tax credit and help with the cost of community college, were likely to be included. Biden responded angrily to a question from RCP's Philip Wegman about his controversial speech last week in Atlanta, where he likened opponents of Democratic voting reform laws to notorious racists, George Wallace, Bull Connor, and Jefferson Davis. I haven't attacked anyone publicly, any senator, any congressman publicly, and my disagreements with them have been made to them, communicated to them privately or in person with my desires, Biden insisted. When reminded of his campaign theme of a return to civility, Biden raged, "Look at what I said! Go back and read what I said!" Before adding sarcastically, "I assume you got into journalism because you like to write." What an ass. What an asshole, seriously? Jeez, it's worse than I ever expected. But, of course, because everybody got involved in it, we have a lot of video. A lot of articles, a lot of video. I don't know why that's where that is, but we're already done with that topic. We got to keep talking about Biden. But apparently Mark Kelly has got back on board and said he'll vote to change the filibuster. Let's grab one from NPR. Biden acknowledged his team should have done more COVID testing earlier. And this is from Alana Wise. And remember, NPR needs you to donate so that you can come out and help them make sure that everyone knows that they need to get tested. So every false positive can be counted and they can fearmonger you in to giving up your freedom. NPR. They need our money, comrade. Never Printing Reality, National Progressive Radio. Let's see what they had to say. Marking the end of his first year in office with a long, wide-ranging, formal press conference, President Biden said that it's been a year of challenges, but also a year of enormous progress, citing statistics on vaccinations, job creations. No, that's not a job creation. People going back to the jobs that they had before is not a job creation, and you know that, and cuts to child poverty. Still, for all this progress, I know there's a lot of frustration and fatigue for this country, Biden said during lengthy opening remarks, referencing the pink pox pandemic and concerns about inflation. He acknowledged that his admin could have been quicker to boost testing for the virus. Should we have done more testing earlier? Yes, but we're doing more now, he said. And while he emphasized that the nation had endured 2 years of physical, psychological weight of the pandemic, he said Americans still had a bright future. Some people call this a new normal. I call it a job not yet finished. Come on, man, Biden said. Wading into the thorny, increasingly political issue of how schools should manage the interests of students, teachers, and parents amid the pandemic, Biden said the schools should remain open, citing funding and supplies provided to the school districts to help better mitigate the threat of the virus. In total, Biden spoke for nearly 2 hours on topics ranging from the pandemic and his administrative response to how he planned to forge forward on his legislative priorities in the nation's foreign policy agenda. So we talked a bit about breaking the Build Back bullshit up into smaller pieces, which, I mean, everything that's in there should be a single issue bill to begin with, but, you know, look for consistency in Congress. Biden said that McConnell and Trump are intent on blocking his agenda. Dude, Trump can't do anything except live rent-free in your head. On Republicans, Biden said that one man out of office, meaning former President Trump, was intimidating senators from supporting any of Biden's policies. He had spoken to 5 unnamed Republican senators who said that they agreed with him privately on some issues, but were worried that they would be defeated in primaries if they were public. We've got to break that. It's got to change, Biden said. On Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell, he said, I actually like Mitch. He's a globalist, like me. He gets adrenochrome just like I do. That's keeping him alive. We go to pizza parlors together. Well, that his prime objective is to try to block Biden's policy. That's okay. I'm a big boy. I've been here before, Biden said, a 36-year veteran of the Senate. Russia will be held accountable. That's laughable. Biden's popularity is sagging ahead of the midterms. Yes. And that's what they have off of that. But we'll probably look into some of those a little bit more closely as we go. Let's grab one from ABC. It's actually got some video clips with this too. This one's got a couple. Biden defensive in rare solo news conference ahead of the 1-year mark in office. From Sarah Kolonovsky, Libby Cathy, Molly Nagel, and Justin Gomez. On the eve of the 1-year anniversary of his inauguration, President Biden held a formal news conference at the White House Wednesday, fielding reporter questions on his handling of the pandemic, the economy, and his legislative agenda. Let's look at some of the video. First, let's talk about the tests. Biden is purchasing millions of tests to distribute for free to the rest of the country, which I will not be taking, because I've already had it at this point. But let's hear what he had to say on that.
Look, we're also increasing testing. Should we have done more testing earlier? Yes. But we're doing more now. We've gone from 0 at-home tests a year ago to 375 million tests on the market in just this month. If you buy a test at a store, your insurance will reimburse you. On top of that, we're making 1 billion at-home tests available for you to order and be delivered to your home for free. Just visit covidtest.gov to know how to get that free test kit to your home. In addition, there are 20,000 sites where you can get tested in person for free now.
So that's one thing that they're coming back off of there, and they're going to try to take. Well, first off, they're going to take the supply out of the hands of the American people because we want to make sure that we're controlling what's happening here, not anything else. So let's do that instead. So that's what they see off of that. Moving on down. Now we're going to talk about the pieces and chunks of Build Back bullshit signed into law.
Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned your Republican colleagues, but right now your top 2 legislative priorities, your social spending package and voting rights legislation, are stalled, blocked by your own party after months of negotiation. You are only guaranteed control of Washington for 1 more year before the midterms. Do you need to be more realistic and scale down these priorities in order to get something passed?
No, I don't think so. when you say more realistic, I think it's extremely realistic to say to people, because let me back up. You all really know the politics in this country and your networks and others. You spend a lot of time, which I'm glad you do, polling this data, determining what the American people's attitudes are, et cetera. American people overwhelmingly agree with me on prescription drugs. They overwhelmingly agree with me on the cost of education. They overwhelmingly agree with me on early education. They overwhelmingly go on the list on child care. And so we just have to make the case of what we're for and what the other team's not for. Look, we knew all along that a lot of this was going to be an uphill fight. And one of the ways to do this is to make sure we make the contrast as clear as we can. And one of the things that I think is we're going to have to do is just make the case. I don't think there's anything unrealistic about what we're asking. I'm not asking for castles in the sky. I'm asking for practical things the American people have been asking for a long time. A long time. And I think we can get it done.
You're not going to scale down any of these priorities. But so far, that strategy isn't working. You haven't been able to get some of these big legislative ticket items done.
I got two real big ones done, bigger than any president has ever gotten in the first year.
But currently, Mr. President, your spending package, voting rights legislation, they're not going anywhere. So
that's true.
Is there...
Man, he sounds like a dirty old man when he does that. Oh, I got two big ones done. Fucking puke. But what I'm going to look at, and I mean, this is a thing that's bothered me, because they need to have all of this in the big $2 trillion package. That's too big for anybody else to read. And now they're already sitting back and talking about chunking this thing up. Why not just chunk it up in the first place? Why do things like prescription drug prices? Look, man. All of America agrees with me on prescription drug prices. Okay, well, sign it as a single issue bill. Introduce it. Have a House member come back, write it up. A single issue bill. We're going to change the prescription drug prices to limit at, because I think it's a limit on top. I don't do prescription drugs, so. But I think it's a limit on the cost of that. So, pen a bill that says, okay, prescription drug prices are going to never be allowed to exceed X, Y, or Z. Here's the legislative mechanics to make that possible. Bring it out for a vote on the House floor. Send it over to the Senate. See if it passes in the Senate. Bring it back to the desk and sign it. But see, that's the thing, is that it's got to be attached. It's got to be a part of a gigantic pork barrel spending package that goes along with it. They can't just do prescription drug prices. They have to do prescription drug prices. They can't just do low-cost insulin. They have to do low-cost insulin and prescription drug prices and pork barrel for a donor in order to get another senator to vote for it, then pork barrel for their buddies on top of it. If you broke down the priorities that they keep trying to harp on Twitter, and just had those in there, and nothing else. I mean, this whole thing would probably cost a couple $1 million, which I still think is outrageous and shouldn't be spent, but regardless, that's what they see coming from that. But that should be the goal, is to have single line bills. But they can't get the big money for their buddies unless they hide it in there with the rest of everything else. So that's what we see coming from ABC. Let's grab one from ABC 6 Action News out of Philly. In a press conference, Biden says nation wary from COVID, but U.S. is in a better place. Which I believe there was video for this one too, if I remember correctly. Yeah, there's video for this one too. President Biden acknowledged Wednesday that the pandemic has left Americans exhausted and demoralized, but insisted in a news conference marking his first year in office, that he has outperformed expectations, he said he would likely have to settle for big chunks of his signature economic package to break an impasse in Congress. He said he believes important parts will still be passed before the 2022 midterms, and voters will back Democrats if they're fully informed, an assignment that he said he will pursue by traveling the country. The president began the news conference by reeling off an early success on coronavirus relief and bipartisan infrastructure deal, but this economic, voting rights, police reform, and immigration agenda have all been thwarted in Democratic-controlled Senate, while inflation has emerged in the past year as an economic threat to the nation and a political risk for Biden. Despite his failing approval numbers, Biden claims to have probably outperformed what anybody thought would happen in a country still coping with the coronavirus. So I wanted to go with this one here because Biden says he'll send military teams to overwhelmed hospitals. This team will procure 500 million additional tests and high-quality masks will be made available free to Americans. Let's watch.
I want to begin by thanking the Secretary of Defense and our FEMA director for joining me today. We were joking earlier. No, we're really joking. When you need something done, call the military. And we'll get FEMA, we'll make sure it gets done. Look, we're about to get a COVID-19 briefing from the military and medical teams on the ground in Arizona, Michigan, and New York. They're part of a major deployment of our nation's armed forces to help hospitals across the country manage this surge of the Omicron virus. This surge is having an impact on hospitals. Like all healthcare workers, they are heroes, and I'm grateful for what they do. But before we begin, I want to provide an update on our fight against COVID-19 and announce new steps. First, the update. I know we're all frustrated as we enter this new year. Omicron variant is causing millions of cases and record hospitalizations. I've been saying that as we remain in this pandemic. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. And I mean by this, right now, both vaccinated and unvaccinated people are testing positive. But what happens after that could not be more different. If vaccinated people test positive, they overwhelmingly have either no symptoms at all or they have mild symptoms. And if you're unvaccinated, if they test positive, you are 17 times more likely to get hospitalized. As a result, they're crowding our hospitals, leaving little room for anyone else who might have a heart attack or an injury in an automobile accident or any injury at all. And yes, the unvaccinated are dying from COVID-19. But here's the deal. Because we fully vaccinated nearly 210 million Americans, the majority of the country is safe from severe COVID-19 consequences. That's why even as the number of cases among the vaccinated Americans go up, deaths are down dramatically from last winter. For example, before its vaccination requirements, the United Airlines was averaging one employee dying a week from COVID-19. After implementing this requirement, it's led to 99% of its employees being vaccinated. United had 3,600 employees test positive, but 0 hospitalizations, 0 deaths in over 8 weeks. But as long as we have tens of millions of people who will not get vaccinated, we're going to have full hospitals and needless deaths.
There are deep questions among Americans about the competence of government, from the messy rollout of 5G this week to the Afghanistan withdrawal to testing on COVID. What have you done to restore Americans' faith in the competence of government? And are you satisfied by the view of the competence of your government?
Look, let's take Afghanistan. I know you all would like to focus on that, which is legitimate. We were spending $1 trillion a week. $1 billion a week in Afghanistan for 20 years. Raise your hand if you think anyone was going to be able to unify Afghanistan under one single government. It's been the graveyard of empires for a solid reason. It is not susceptible to unity, number one. So, the question was, do I continue to spend that much money per week in the state of Afghanistan, knowing that the idea that being able to succeed, other than sending more body bags back home, is highly, highly unusual. My dad used to have an expression. He'd say, son, if everything's equally important to you, nothing's important to you. There is no way to get out of Afghanistan after 20 years easily. Not possible, no matter when you did it. And I make no apologies for what I did. I have a great concern for the women and men who were blown up on the line at the airport by a terrorist attack against them. But the military will acknowledge, and I think you will, who know a lot about foreign policy, that had we stayed and I had not pulled those troops out, we would be asked to put somewhere between 20 and 50,000 more troops back in. Because the only reason more Americans weren't being killed than others is because the last president signed an agreement to get out by May the 1st. And so everything was copacetic. Had we not gotten out, and the acknowledgement is we'd be putting a lot more forces in. Now, do I feel badly what's happening as a consequence of the incompetence of the Taliban? Yes, I do. But I feel badly also about the fistulas that are taking place in eastern Congo. I feel badly about a whole range of things around the world that we can't solve every problem. And so I don't view that as a competence issue.
Yeah, well, one of the things that goes with Afghanistan, too, and I mean, he's absolutely right. That's where empires go to die. But, I mean, there was still a way to do that. This was all brokered, ready for you. Ready to go. Like, hey, let's just do this back in May. But you couldn't let the Orange Man have the victory for it. So you had to go back in and stay for 6 months. So that's what they see off of that. All right. CNN tells us Biden predicts Russia will move into Ukraine, but says minor incursion may prompt discussion over consequences. This is from Kevin Liptak. President Biden on Wednesday predicted Russia will move into Ukraine, citing existential concerns by the country's president, Vladimir Putin, even as he acknowledged disunity within NATO over how to respond to a minor incursion. The candidate assessment laid bare the struggle Biden faces in creating meaningful consequences and deterrence for Moscow, which remains closely intertwined economically with the U.S. top European partners. The remark elicited near immediate outcry in Kiev, where officials have been meeting with Biden's top diplomat as Russian troops amass on the country's border. High-level attempts to clean up the comment soon followed at the White House. While Biden vowed withering economic consequences on Russia should Putin send his troops over the frontier, including restricting its financial transitions in U.S. dollars, he suggested Western nations were not in sync on what to do should a lesser violation occur. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and we end up having a fight about what to do and not do, Biden told reporters at an East Room news conference. But if they actually do what they're capable of doing with the forces amassed on the border, it's going to be a disaster for Russia if they further invade Ukraine. Later asked to clarify what he meant by a minor incursion, Biden said he drew the line at Russian forces crossing the border killing Ukrainian fighters. So, and yeah, they're doing big damage control over this one too, because, you know, where do you go at this point? Oh, well, he's just going to let Russia take a little bit more of Ukraine? I mean, this is going to be Crimea all the fuck over again. And his boss didn't do anything about that, and now he's not going to do anything about this either. Probably because Volodymyr Zelensky went back and had the conversation with the Donald. Like, oh, you wanna tell them about Burisma? You wanna tell Republicans about that? Hey, well, maybe you should lose some of your land then. Ha 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 ha! Son of a bitch. Ben Rhodes of Pod Save the World fame decided he needed to get on this because, well, the only thing that they have is racism. We are potentially on the verge of a land war in Europe aimed at extinguishing democracy and sovereignty. And the American right wing is on the side of ethno-nationalist authoritarianism. That's where we're at. Because Tucker made a really good point about the NATO thing, which I don't know that the NATO, well, by the rules of NATO, we can't let the Ukraine join because it's not in a position of peace right now. By the rules of NATO, the Ukraine can't join, but Tucker got into it, and all that they have is telling us that everybody that they don't like is racist. Let's listen to what Tucker had to say.
Why are the Russians so upset? Why are we moving towards some kind of conflict? Well, there's one reason. Over a number of different administrations, the United States government has pushed Ukraine to join NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Imagine if Mexico fell under the direct military control of China. We would see that as a threat, of course. There'd be no reason for that. Well, that's how Russia views NATO control of Ukraine, and why wouldn't they? We don't get anything out of pushing Ukraine into NATO, so why are we doing this? Clinton, why are the Russians so upset? Why are we moving?
And Tucker makes a good point. I mean, if China did come in and, well, hell, let's not do that what if with Mexico. Because it got actually talked about last year and then completely forgotten about, where China started doing military exercises in Western Canada. I never got confirmation if that was true either, by the way. So do take that with a grain of salt. But the conversation came out about China doing military exercises in Western Canada. And while it's not a military takeover of Canada, I mean, yeah, if there was a military takeover of Canada because China was doing the exercises over there, we'd be having a little bit of a conversation right now about what to do about the Chinese in Canada. But also same thing, if they did the same thing in Mexico. So an organization that is specifically designed to stand up to Russian aggression, moving bases into a territory that butts up against Russia itself proper, that used to be its Soviet territory on top of that, I could see where Putin might start to take that the wrong way. I could definitely see that. But once again, in order to join NATO as a country, your country has to be in a state of peace first. And, well, Putin can just keep starting and licking his chops at the corners here, leaving Ukraine in conflict, and they'll never be able to join also. So that's what they see off of that. All right. Wow, we're running up on the clock here. Well, I guess let's see how many more we can get. I think we'll get up to the blaze here and then we'll be done. The White House has had to issue a statement cleaning up Biden's disastrous remarks on Russia and the Ukraine. From Ryan Saavedra. White House Press Secretary Red-Haired Bobblehead was forced to issue a statement cleaning up the Democrat President Biden's disastrous remarks about a potential Russian invasion into the Ukraine. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and we end up having to fight about what to do and what not to do, Biden told reporters regarding what Russia might do. But if they actually do what they're capable of doing with the forces amassed on the border, it's going to be a disaster for Russia if they further invade the Ukraine. Alex Ward says, source close to Zelensky admin on Biden's Russia-Ukraine remarks, the fallout in Kiev will be nuclear. Probably literally. Abe Greenwald said, CNN, Kiev officials shocked and stunned by Biden's statement on potential Russian invasion. Great work, Mr. President. CNN Chiron from Sung-Min Kim. CNN Chiron, Ukrainian official shocked Biden would give green light to Putin. Terry Moran said, did Biden just invite Putin into eastern Ukraine, minimizing a minor incursion? Dan McLaughlin of the McLaughlin Group says Biden is attacking the legitimacy of American elections while signaling to Putin to try a minor incursion in Ukraine. None of this is normal. None of this is okay. This is great. This is fine. Psaki released the following statement after Biden's remarks. President Biden has been clear with the Russian president, if any Russian military forces move across the Ukrainian border, that's a renewed invasion, and it will be met with a swift, severe, and united response from the United States and our allies. President Biden also knows from long experience that the Russians have extensive playbook of aggression, short of military action, including cyber attacks and paramilitary tactics. And he affirmed today that those acts of Russian aggression will be met with divisive and reciprocal and united response. I'll circle back to more of that. Thank you. So that's full-on damage control. Alright, here's one from Zero Hedge that I thought you guys would find interesting, especially since I think a lot of you guys are car guys. Biden's infrastructure bill, now signed into law, mandates vehicle kill switches by 2026. Yeah, all that reason not to own a newer vehicle. From Tyler Durden. The rumors we first reported back in December have turned out to be true. The U.S. federal government is apparently in the process of trying to force automakers to install kill switches in their vehicles that authorities can use to shut down any newer vehicle. The law comes as part of President Biden's infrastructure bill, which was recently signed into law. According to Yahoo, the government kill switch is, like all good thefts of civil liberties, being positioned as a safety measure. The mandate needs to be put into effect by 2026, muscle cars and trucks reported. We noted last month that former Rep. Bob Barr, writing for the Daily Caller, called the measure included in the bill disturbingly short on details, but for the fact that the proposed device must passively monitor the performance of the driver of a motor vehicle to accurately identify whether that driver may be impaired. Which, of course, is code for some kind of device that is constantly on and monitoring your vehicle and will likely have the power to shut down your vehicle anytime it wants. This is a privacy disaster in the making, and the fact that the provision made it through Congress reveals yet again how little its members care about the privacy of their constituents, the Daily Caller wrote. It appears that in President Biden's future, not only will you not be in charge of your own personal health decisions, but you also won't be in charge of whether or not you can fire up your car, which you bought with your hard-earned money, to drive it somewhere when you deem fit. The decision will now rest in the hands of an algorithm, the report said. Similar monitoring and control devices have faced constitutional opposition, the report notes, notably with the Fifth Amendment's right to not self-incriminate and the Sixth Amendment's right to face one's accuser. So there's a lot going on with that, but I mean, does it stop with if the car thinks that you're drunk? Does it stop if the car smells weed? Does it stop there? Does it stop if you're driving too fast, if you're being a nuisance on the road? Does it move on to, oh, you said, let's go Brandon today. Oh, I guess you won't be able to start up your car. I'm sorry. The government has deemed you too dangerous to operate a motor vehicle. Oh, you've decided that you want to move out to the country a little bit and do homesteading? Oh, well, you can't take your pickup truck to go to the store to get seeds. I'm sorry, but that's dangerous anti-government rhetoric. You can't do that. Where does it end? All right. You know what? We're going to hold on to these two, but I wanted to get to this one for sure before heading out of here. So let's get a refresh on this. From NBC News, Starbucks nixes vaccine mandate after Supreme Court ruling. From the Associated Press, Starbucks, a shock to nobody, honestly, is no longer requiring its U.S. workers to be vaccinated against the pink pox, reversing a policy it announced earlier this month. In a memo sent Tuesday to employees, the Seattle coffee giant said it was responding to last week's ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court in a 6-3 vote. The court rejected the Brandon administration's plan to require vaccines or regular COVID testing at companies with more than 100 workers. We respect the court's ruling and will comply, Starbucks Chief Operating Officer John Culver wrote in the memo. Starbucks' reversal is among the most high-profile corporate actions in response to the Supreme Court ruling. Many other big companies, including Target, have been mum on their plans. On January 3rd, Starbucks said it will require all employees to be vaccinated by February 9th or face a weekly COVID test requirement. At the time, Culver said it was the responsibility of Starbucks leadership to do whatever we can to help keep you safe and create the safest work environment possible. In Tuesday's memo, Culver said the company continues to strongly encourage vaccinations and booster shots. The company also told workers on Tuesday that they shouldn't wear cloth masks to work, so instead use medical-grade surgical masks. Starbucks required workers to reveal their vaccination status by January 10th. The company said Wednesday that 90% have reported, and the vast majority are fully vaccinated. Starbucks wouldn't say what percentage of workers are not fully vaccinated. So, and of course, this pissed off every leftoid in the country about Starbucks. And by the way, I'm still not going to be purchasing Starbucks because their coffee sucks. And it's overpriced, it's overexpensive. But I mean, it's fun to watch stuff like this happen, where the Starbucks, I don't believe, finds themselves in a position where they want to be sued over side effects. Even though there are no side effects, Susan, don't ban me. There are no side effects, YouTube. Don't ban me. Perfectly safe, nothing bad could ever happen. But in the event that there's a side effect now, because the company is making the ruling on it, then they're responsible for anything that happens back up off of this. And I'm sure the CEO of Starbucks looked at this and said, no, fuck that. Not worth it. Not doing it at this point. So, yeah, it's time. But just looking back at some of the reactions of all of this too, and like I said, once everything went down last week, when we talked about it on KTZed Redemption on Monday, and when we talked about it on Contemporary last week, it's going to be on the company to decide whether or not to do this. And a lot of these companies are not going to take the risk, especially if it's going to be a minimum wage thing. I would not be surprised to find out that Target comes back and reverses this too. But they're trying to be mum about it as well, because they don't want to have reactions like, well, this. A guy who does his own research. I'm so proud of Starbucks for caving to freedom-loving anti-vaxxers by suspending COVID vaccine and test requirements for employees making your coffee. I'll take one grande Omicron Frappuccino with no shot. And a twist of ivermectin, please. And of course, he's got to be out here with his tinfoil hat. Yeah, this guy sounds like someone who does his own research. Sounds a lot more like he just does whatever the big government tells him to do. But he's going to be a little snark lord. So, well, we'll make him famous. Alright. And with that, we're done with news for the day. We'll pick up some of the rest of the stuff tomorrow before we do live chat. So by the way, if you're just lurking right now, make sure you get your name in the live chat so I can come in and say thank you to you tomorrow at the end of the show. Lurkers get at least one message in, because then you'll register up on there and they'll know what to grab off of that. And we'll end out the day with a couple things I like and a thing that I hate. Alright. So it's never all bad around here, and I found this a couple weeks ago, and I was just looking through the Discord off of this, and the meme wars are hilarious, and of course, there are enough people out there that think that Pepe is automatically racist for one reason or another, but regardless, Pepe found a bunch, or it's not Pepe, that's Apu. Apu found a bunch of his friends, and they made a little band, and they helped this lady dance in what appears to be the U.S.-Mexico border. Clemera says, 2021 may have been bad, but it did give us this.
Abun Bang Jago. Abun Bang Jago. Abun Bang Jago. Abun Bang Jago.
I mean, the juxtaposition of this was just, that was fun in and of itself. Like I say, this appears to be the U.S.-Mexico checkpoint here. I'm not sure where, but it looks like military incursion or military vehicles coming up to go back and check it. So, but, you know, there it is, Apu and his friends, and their little lady friend, just dancing the night away. Alright, and another thing that I like, this came into the Discord from Spartan. Girl 10 survives minus 11 degrees Celsius temperatures by cuddling a stray dog for warmth after getting lost in a snowstorm as she walked home from school in Russia. From Will Stewart from Mail Online. A 10-year-old girl miraculously survived ferociously cold night in a snow blizzard in Russia by clinging to a stray dog for warmth. Vika Z was found with frostbite hugging a fluffy abandoned pet following a frantic search by police officials and volunteers. She had got lost a half mile from her home as she returned from school in Oblagorsk on Russia's largest island, Sakhalin, in temperatures that plunged to minus 11 Celsius, said police. The blizzards led to snowfalls more than 2 feet deep, with drifts piling up on the first floor of houses in some places. The girl was eventually found 18 hours after walking home from school. She told how she was hugging a fluffy dog for warmth. Vika and the stray mongrel were lying on a mattress which had been put out for homeless dogs under a low balcony, giving shelter from the raging storm. Earlier reports say that she had clambered into a kennel, but this was denied. She was taken straight to the hospital, found to have mild frostbite, said a local source. Vika had left school around 1 p.m. and was found the next morning at 8:45 a.m. Olesia Vosniuk, an official with the investigative committee, said she was hiding under a balcony with the dog. And there's the dog. The girl loves animals so much, she used to play with local dogs all the time. She went to feed these dogs after school and then got caught in a snowstorm and strong winds. The space under the balcony gave some shelter, but still took more than 40 people over 12 hours to find her from when her parents raised the alarm. Her relieved mother, Tatiana, 34, was reunited with Vika at the hospital. The girl was allowed to home the same day. Now there are plans to honor the dog that saved Vika. If they can find it, the stray has gone missing. Which, I mean, that's a hopeful story in and of itself. Apparently that's not the dog. But I do hope that they can find it and give the dog a good home, because, I mean, that's got to be a grateful feeling for the mother in and of itself. To know that a stray animal was the thing that was the difference between life and death for her daughter. Because this could have very easily turned out much, much worse. This could have easily turned into a disaster, and it didn't. So, that's what we see coming off of that. And now we'll do a thing that I hate. So, those of you who are friends and followers of Stephen Ignoramus probably know about this already, but I looked at this and I'm not exactly a fan of this either, and I am in no way a super trad, super traditional person. I am very much in the camp of, you do what you want to do, and don't ask me to be involved in it if I don't want to be. But words do have meaning, even if it is a slang meaning off this. And Palumbo coming back out of here, Palumbo trying to change the definition off of this to try to subvert the religious aspect off of this word is just, it's beyond it for me here. Brad Palumbo tweets out, "We are redefining what it means to be based, whether they like it or not. Freedom is based." Freedom is kind of based, I'm not going to lie. Catholic integralism and other forms of light theocracy are authoritarian and un-American. No, those are pretty fucking based too. Freedom is based, Brad Palumbo, you're correct off of this, but, you know, you're coming out here and you're admitting at this point that you're going to be the subversives that you assured us all that you weren't going to be. And this goes on to a Spectator World article that says the battle for based. So let's get this up here. Libertarians and traditionalists duke it out on Twitter over the popular and charged word. Earlier this week, a pair of right libertarian journalists, announced the launch of their new site, Based Politics. All hell promptly broke loose on right-wing Twitter. In the first editorial for their new site, co-founders Brad Palumbo and Hannah Cox defined based as upfront, on point, or rooted in true principles. That fits pretty well with my understanding of the term, but it leaves something out. Yeah, it is on point or rooted in true principles. But this subversive kind of way that you're trying to use based is not true principles. That's something that accounts for the pushback they received from the post-liberal national conservative crowd. According to them, libertarians like Palumbo and Cox are nothing more than coke-funded shills who fight for tax cuts and weaker antitrust laws while drag queens read to our children. They are not based, they are not, that's correct, and have no right to refer to themselves as such. Our culture is not your costume, one popular right-wing Twitter personality quipped. Sohrab Ahmari, an American conservative editor who advocates for political Catholicism, tweeted, "I'm never using based again. No, that's not how that works, because then they win. Now that these corporate schmucks have appropriated it." Ahmari also threw in some disparaging comments about Palumbo's gigantic head and Cox's tactfully overspilling décolletage as they appeared in the announcement graphic. I asked Palumbo, full disclosure, he and I are both affiliated with Young Voices, whether he expected this kind of reaction. Here's what he had to say. "Oh yeah, we anticipated pushback from the very online nationalist crowd. I'm not particularly bothered by it, although some of it has been ad hominem and juvenile. That's pretty pathetic bad behavior. We won't stoop to that. Okay. But the pushback is kind of the point. The nationalists want to redefine what it means to be conservative so that it resembles big government. Socially conservative Elizabeth Warren, economics more than Ronald Reagan. We still believe in the future of the right should be rooted in free markets, individual liberty, the Constitution, and limited government. The term based originated in the black community as slang for being high on crack. Perhaps there's some connection with freebasing or smoking cocaine. From there, the term's definition expanded to cover all the strange erratic behaviors typically associated with crackheads. A modern equivalent might be to say someone is trippin', tweakin'. This doesn't necessarily mean the person is under the influence of psychedelics or meth, only that they're acting like it. You're crazy, spoken with either dismissiveness or with a hint of admiration, would convey the same meaning. Yeah, but that's not what being based is anymore. It's changed at this point. Yes, I understand that there's the side of it that starts with freebasing, but no. You're based in the ideals, in the deep religious ideals that hold a society together. That's what based is. This is wrong. And yes, freedom is very based. But coming back out here to try to redefine the words to start the argument, to get reactions like this of, I'm never going to use based again, that's not based. You're not based, Brad Palumbo. So, that's what we have off of that. And with that, let's throw some outro music up and head out of here for the day. I gotta go to work. Alright, so with that, we're gonna head out of here for the day. We'll be back here tomorrow for more contemporary, more news headlines, and we'll be doing live chat tomorrow, so if you are just lurking, get those last minute messages in so I can say thank you, and then we'll cover some of the live chat tomorrow too. So remember, if your comment is sufficiently stupid or bigoted or hateful or anything else, it'll probably raise the intellectual level of this program, so it has to get read on the air. So come back here, join us tomorrow morning for more of that, and we'll see you then. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.